thine, all praise and all thanksgiving be ever known.
A reading from the first letter of St. Peter. If you invoke as Father him who judges impartially according to each one's work, conduct yourself with reverence during the time of your sojourning, realizing that you were ransomed from your bad conduct, handed on by your ancestors, not with perishable things like silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, as the spotless, unblemished Lamb. He was known before the foundation of the world, but revealed in the final time for you, who through him, believing in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are in God. The words of St. Peter remind his people and remind us who meditate on it that our redemption came by the immersion of each one by virtue of baptism in the blood of Christ, that spotless and that precious blood of the divine Lamb of God. And because of this, we now that enter into the fountain of baptism, we enter there with our sinfulness, the sin that we inherit, and we rise from that baptismal fount to live a life worthy of our call. And so we need to be people to always look for the final times, that final time when our union with God will be a reality. For through him we come to believe in God, the one that sent his Son to redeem us, the one that the Father has raised, Jesus Christ, and raised him from the dead, so that through him we can also share in his glory, so that the faith that we have and hope are all coming from one source, from God. Today, dear people, the 9th of May, John Paul II designated as a day where we honor Saint George Precca. Although he beatified him, it was this Pope, present Pope, who really on 3rd of June of 3 years ago, he elevated him as a saint. Who is George Precca? George Precca is a priest from the island of Malta. As a young man born in 1880, on the 12th of February, as a young boy, he was about to lose his life on the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Well, they are at the feast, they went to the shore because there's the shore avenue of the statue come through. And he was playing in the water, and before we know it, he was in the sea. They thought that he was drowned, but he was saved. As a young man, he felt the call to the priesthood. And he entered the priesthood, and he was ordained in 1906. And we know that one day, as he returned from Mass, he saw a young boy pushing a cart full of dirt, manure. And all of a sudden, the George felt so bad for this boy because he was going uphill, and the boy was very small for that job. So he put his hands on the handles to try to help the boy to push up. As soon as he put his hands, he felt that inmost, as we say, peace. And before we know it, the boy disappeared. And the Lord speak to him and say, George, you need to clean the trash of this island. He did not know what that meant. And after prayer of reflection and spiritual direction, the Spirit Director told him that he needed to put this into prayer and see what the Lord wants him to do. The Before you know it, he was coming out of the church, and there was some young people there who were talking about church and different business. And then George stood at the church and listened to them as they were conversing. Before he knew it, he was sitting with them, and he began to teach them the faith. He began to teach them the articles of faith. And that was the beginning of the foundation of the society. Before we know it, he was asked permission by his pastor to talk to his kids in the sacristy. And before we know it, they now went to a home. And from there, they began spreading from one parish to another. And what was the objection? The objection is that after he formed young men and also later on young women, he formed them with one intention, that they will teach the faith and faith alone. Not the way they think it, not the way they feel it, but the way the magisterium of the church thinks. Because that was his faithfulness. The three foundations of Don George is the Eucharist, the Virgin Mother, and the authority of the Pope, together with the teaching of the magisterium. He would used to say, I do nothing that is going to go against Mother Church. I am here to help Mother Church in the evangelization of the good news. Today I was listening to some of the teachings of Don George, and really one sentence struck me very deeply. And he said, if you really are sincere about the love that you have for God, you must make that love known to your people. I repeat again, if you are really sincere about the love that you have for God, you have meant to make it real for your people. And that is really the counsel. In the words of George prior to the council. Don George, as you know, was become known very well among the people of Malta. And before the war, there was reports that Don George is a progressive priest. And they went to the Archbishop, who at the time, 1944, took possession of the island, and he really called George in and told him that because he is a little progressive in his teaching, that he is involving the laity, which at that time the laity was not known, was no thing to do. He has to be silenced, to close all the homes, not to say public mass, not to hear confession, and he has to remain in his home. The only thing that he has option is to have somebody who goes shop for him. He cannot do it. And Don George obeyed for 10 years. This was the life of Don George. Did he like it? Unfortunately, no. Did he was obedient? Definitely yes. He used to say the voice of God is the voice of my superior. My superior does not want this to happen, I will not do it. And Don George, after 10 years, he was called again to the chancery by the Archbishop. And he said to him, George, I have sinned against God and against you. I have listened too much to those who really was envy of you. I asked for forgiveness. And the Archbishop began to move from his chair to kneel for forgiveness from George. George said to him, Archbishop, you are my Lord, you are my superior. I understand everything that you are saying. And I appreciate that you called me in here. He said, immediately, I want you to open back the homes. Now remember that these homes are not purchased by the church. They are purchased by the men and the women of his society. These men and women are not married. They dress like the Amish people. If you look at them, they look like the Amish people. The woman, no makeup whatsoever, no jewelry whatsoever, and the hair has to be put all the way up, and they have to wear veils. The men, no tie and no whatever after shaving, nothing they can put on. And they have to go work with other people. But in the evening, from 4:30 up to 9 o'clock at night or later, they spend it teaching the young and instruct themselves. After they finish the young people for communion and confirmation, then around 7:30 they gather themselves. And they begin to instruct themselves for an hour and a half every day. They have the clock, they call it. The clock means that every hour they have prayers to say. It's like religious, but not with vows. They live in the real world, they live at home, and they have one thing in mind, to proclaim the gospel. When George was asked to open in Kenya, in Australia, in Albania, in Egypt, in England, but he never had his eyes on America. He used to say, America is a big continent. Although they love God, but I am afraid to send my members because I am afraid that I will lose them. Why? He never mentioned. And George was a very saintly man. He used to visit town by town. The people used to come with thousands. Whenever Don George is coming, they will close streets. Our buses, Sharabangs, they cannot go because the people will be on the road walking towards the destination where he is going to go. So they advertise ahead of time when he is coming. The first thing that Don George do, go in the parish church, and they must close the doors of the church. You will spend an hour before the Eucharist. Then they will make platform in a big square, because our churches, although this is a peanut comparing with our churches, but our church was too small for him. So they put him in open air. Thank God the island, we don't have that much rain, we don't have too much nonsense that we have here, 50 degrees. And so everyone will bring his own chair, or standing on benches, or standing, and then George will come there on a platform and he preach. And he preach. But he was not enough. The people want more. So he instructs his members to do the same. If you go in summer in Malta, you will see on the seashore, his members will have the same atmosphere, and people will stop swimming and they listen. And they listen for 15 days. And then of course they have the closing mass and they have great confessions. If you hear them speak, they are better than any orator or any preacher you want to hear. They are like people, but they are so very much into the word. And George, as I said to you, was very much sought by many to touch him, to heal, but mostly for the sacrament of penance. Don George would not allow the penitent to talk. When the penitent began to open his lips, he said, I know, my daughter, what is bothering you. And he will tell you exactly the sin. With whom you committed, where you have committed, and how many times you have committed. That even the penitent was shocked, because sometimes they even know. And there are those smarties who goes to try to be smart with him. He will throw them out of the confession. And you can hear them with a nice voice. Get out, get out, get out. And George was not a man who take nonsense, especially when it comes to faith. And George used to get a little bit hot under the collar when he began to speak about the morality of the nation. How many times I saw him, I was 10 years old, he take the burrata and squeeze in his hand like nothing. And to speak about vergogna, connazione, it means vergogna to this nation. What we have come through. And that, at the time, in the 60s, my dear, we were like angels compared to today. But the other thing is that has made Don George free. Don George used to read so hard. Many people used to go to him, my mother died, Don George is my mother saved. And he used to say, I saw her like an angel enter into the kingdom. And when he has to say something that is not very nice, he will say, pray for all souls, dear, pray for all souls. He was devoted to souls. He was devoted to the lady. He was a very small man, and the only thing that he used to do, every feast of Mount Carmel, he will go and carry the cross of the, we call it the clergy cross. The clergy cross is not like that. It's big, all silver and gold, and very, very heavy. I think when I was younger, I used to carry my own parish, and when I become to, become to 40, when I come around that lampstand of the Blessed Sacrament in the middle, to go around it, one time I thought he was going to take me, so I said I would not take it. So it's not something that you take it lightly. And he used to do it as a sacrifice for Our Lady. He always speak about the bronze scapular. How many times, on the first Saturday of the month, we used to sing the Valerians, the Blessed Mother. See, good Virgin. And many times, you can see this Don George kneeling in front of the altar. And many times tear comes from his eyes. What about on Fridays? When all the young people leaves, the members will put the cross on the floor. And Don George was not a spring chicken, he was 8 years old. You see this priest kneeling to kiss the cross. And when he stands up from the cross, you see tears coming out. That is what a saint is all about. Don George, many people say, oh, Don George, you are a saint. I say, hey, be quiet, lady, be quiet. That's the way he talks, it's very soft. But sometimes they used to insult him. You pretend that you are a saint. Oh God, thank you for giving me this cross to bear. He was a man of no honor. The Archbishop wants to make him Monsignor, although he became a Monsignor, but he never wants the title. He remained with Don George. When George finally comes to his end, when he closed his eyes on the 26th of July of the year 1962, the crowds that filled the church of his parish, St. Gaetanos, and the roads was packed. Everyone wants to touch the litter of Don George. Finally, they arrive at the center. The center is where Don George every Wednesday used to gather all his members, men and women, to different sides. He did not have co-ed, even his homes. One for the boys at one end of the town, one for the girls at the end of the. He never believed in co-eds. And he always, and where he was used to teach them, there under the altar there was the crypt where Don George was. Of course, when he became blessed, they took him out and put him in the church upstairs. And they found the body incorrupt. When I was immortal at the time, I went to the crypt and I said to the people from Rome who are going to open, can I see? They say, no, everyone out of this room. Because if they take something and they pretend that, belong to Don George, that would be, a scandal. So everything was sealed and everything was put up accordingly. But what I'm saying to you is, God has a purpose. Why select these people? Because these people, with their humbleness and love, they will shame us. They will shame us how much they love the Lord. Today we are so cheap with our time. Sometimes everything is according to our schedule, not according to His schedule. Many times, we find ourselves, saying no. The pastor asks you to do something. Oh no, because I am busy and then this. Little you know that voice of a pastor or voice of somebody who in the parish asks you to do something, it's God moving you to do what He asks of you to do. Don George, as you show us the way, help us to come closer to the Lord. Help us to see like you the true vision of God. And through your writing, through your meditation, and to you, your holy life, teach us how to love. God bless you.